The problem is that since the ego is a fragment of the entire universe, it's a fragmented consciousness. Literally, the ego's survival depends upon a lack of integrity. That's why integrity is so rare amongst humans. And if you're a high integrity person, you might be shocked at, like, why is everybody else so low integrity? Well, because they got egos and they're surviving, and survival really requires a lack of integrity. Because fundamentally, metaphysically, to survive as a little part of the whole universe, you have to be committed to maintaining that little boundary of who you think you are, your identity, your limited identity. You have to be committed to maintaining that at any cost, no matter what it does to the rest of the system. And therefore, you're committed to unholism. And holism and integrity is one of the most threatening things to a condensed ego, because it threatens that boundary, right? Because your loyalty, if you're a deep, rigid ego, your loyalty is to maintaining the boundary of you at any cost. And then to let that go, to surrender that, to become more spiritual and more developed, you're surrendering that boundary. And as you do that, it's threatening. It's very threatening to your survival. You can't survive in the old ways that you used to be able to. You can't cheat, steal, lie, exploit, seduce, and manipulate people the way that you were able to before. This, in a sense, this makes success more difficult in a world where the majority of people achieve success via these means. It's difficult to win a political election without, in some way, cheating, manipulating, exploiting, or lying, which is why they say politicians are liars, lawyers are liars. Well, yeah, it's difficult to win it's difficult to be a lawyer without lying on behalf of your clients. That's, in a sense, what lawyers are paid to do, is to make up the best case. Lawyers are not paid to tell the truth in a courtroom. They're paid to only tell a part of the truth, the part that serves their client. That's like their literal professional obligation, is to do that. A lawyer's professional obligation is to not tell the truth. Now, that doesn't mean they go out there and lie deliberately, explicitly, because they can get, caught in that lie, and then the judge will reprimand them, maybe even disbar them. So a lawyer might not be able to lie explicitly, but they can lie in subtle ways, through manipulation, through omission, through the way they frame a situation for the jury and the judge, the stuff they omit and leave out and don't say, or the way that they emphasize a particular point in a way that it shouldn't be emphasized. They overemphasize certain aspects. So see, the lawyer is not really interested in the truth. And most professions are like this. That's survival. So as long as you're committed to survival of your little identity, there's going to be some degree of lack of integrity within you, and it's going to be a question of how committed are you? Like, if you're really committed to the Christian identity, or the Muslim identity, or the atheist identity, that commitment in and of itself, you might think, like, well, what's wrong with that? Well, what you don't see, what's wrong with that, is that commitment in and of itself to something so narrow and so limited, by definition, comes with a lack of integrity. Because it's not the whole. You're not integrating the whole universe if you only think you're a Christian. Or you identify purely as an atheist. You're not integrating everything there is to integrate. Therefore, you're less than the full absolute truth. And therefore, whenever your mind or ego or psyche comes into contact with something larger than yourself, it's going to have to invent defense mechanisms, and it's going to have to get sneaky. And it's going to have to, in order to enforce the smallness of your worldview. See? And the reason you're doing that is because to admit of something larger than your worldview, that's admitting you're wrong. Ego doesn't like to admit that it's wrong. To admit that you're wrong, you have to admit that your view of reality is wrong. That has a cost. That has an emotional cost. That's painful to do. For a scientist or an atheist to admit that they're wrong about the fundamental metaphysics of reality is deeply emotionally disturbing and painful. It's so painful that they would even deny, if they're listening to me right now, that you're going to even deny that what I'm saying here has any validity whatsoever. But also the Christian and the Muslim and the Democrat and the Republican and the Marxist and the fascist. The problem is that all of these worldviews are just too small, and they commit you to a life of not being in integrity.